Fidel Castro, whom the Cuban people loved. You are oppressed.
Well, looks like we're in for a wild ride.
Previously said, under feudalism, one would work the land and surrender most of their crops to the Lord. Under capitalism, one works somewhere and pretty much surrenders all the profit for their labor to the owner. Explain to me how that's any different from feudalism whatsoever.
This is just fucking ridiculous. Capitalism and feudalism are nothing alike. Feudalism is based on force from the king or whichever aristocrat is in charge. Capitalism is entirely based on voluntary exchange. If that does not happen, it is not capitalism. If you are not able to leave and move voluntarily, you aren't in a capitalism. You are in a cronyism, a plutocracy, or some other authoritarian state.
All of the profit goes to a single person or very few people who own everything. Whether or not the owners actually do any work or not, they reap the benefits. What I have just described in a nutshell for you is called class struggle. You and the person that you work for will inherently never be able to see eye to eye since your goals are not aligned.
Those people who own everything have and take all the risk. The only risk the employee takes is not having a job. If the business goes bankrupt, then the owner still has to pay for all the expenses that go with that, and any more that still remain, and may be broke and disheveled because of it. The employee only has to go looking for another job.
The United States is currently the only first world country to have no form of universal free health.
The American healthcare system is neither private nor public. It is a hellish mix of the worst of both worlds. Most insurance companies' revenue comes from the government. That is not at all a free market. For example, 72% of United Health's revenue comes from the taxpayer, not the market. This causes prices to rise because companies know they can charge the government any price they want, and the government won't give a flying fuck. This is also roughly the same thing that happens to college loans, which I may tackle in some other video in the future.
It's currently estimated that 1.5 times the amount of food needed to adequately feed the population is currently being produced. Yet 2% of the world's population, 16 million people, are currently starving. These people are not starving because of a lack of food. They're starving because it's not profitable to feed them.
If it weren't profitable to feed them, then poverty wouldn't have dropped off a cliff when capitalism became the default economic system. Countries like the USSR and Venezuela also had these issues. Your issue here is that humans need food, water, and other basic necessities to survive, not capitalism. If multiple systems have the same issue, then it's universal and not an issue with a particular system. What's more, communist and socialist countries have always had it worse, with long breadlines, the likes of which the West has not seen since the Great Depression. The only somewhat outlier with this was Cuba, but that's only because the USSR was subsidizing and giving it food to keep it afloat. Almost immediately after the Soviet Union fell, Cuba's living standards dropped like a rock right with it.
As you, an American, probably know, in every single history book, capitalism is portrayed as the only economic system that works. It's almost as if capitalism is as American as shooting a shotgun out of the back of your truck while drinking a Bud Light.
This is partially true. For my high school education, it was Keynesian economics which was praised, not Chicago or Austrian economics. This has also been true with other schools and curriculums as well. Chicago-style economics is branded as trickle-down, and Austrian is often mentioned as evil or uncaring.
The argument that I hear for capitalism a lot is that America was successful mostly, if not entirely, because of capitalism. I disagree with this assessment for several reasons. A. America has better geography than any country in human history. It has more than enough farmland to feed its entire population, more livable area than most countries on Earth, and has no countries in the Americas capable of competing with it on any level.
You could say much the same, to some extent, of Western Russia pre-USSR. Ukraine supplied plenty of food, they had plenty of oil in the Caucasus. However, to be fair, they did have powerful neighbors, but they were a military powerhouse at the time as well. But due to feudalism and the Tsar, they lagged behind the rest of Europe. who gave their citizens rights.
Is that without a free market, no new innovations would happen. I'd like to refer to the polio vaccine. In 1961, Dr. Albert Sabin developed a polio vaccine. There was no vaccine like it, and patenting this vaccine could have given him all the money that he ever wanted. He could have retired that very day if he had just patented his vaccine, but he didn't. He knew that patenting a vaccine like this was morally wrong, and so he sold the rights to the World Health Organization for $1.
Basically, the same thing happened with insulin. Very few free market capitalists are in favor of patents. They cause artificial price rises and stifle competition. It's especially true for those who call themselves libertarians.
Why do people so vehemently defend capitalism, regardless of the fact that it works for nobody?
Except that the freer the market is, the less poverty there is, the higher the literacy rate is, the better education is, the better mental score is, etc. I got all these graphs I'm hopefully putting up on the screen right now.
I want to ask each and every single one of you watching this video, can you name one country which has made the switch to socialism that was not either directly invaded or harshly sanctioned by the US and one of its Western allies? You can't name one of those countries because it does not exist.
To your counter-argument against the US and allies sanctioning socialist countries, I agree that it should not happen. Sanctions hurt the working class far more than the political class. However, if an economic system is better than the other, then it shouldn't need to interact with another economic system in order to succeed.
Nothing, and I mean nothing that is not profitable, will ever be done under capitalism, whether it's housing the homeless, feeding the hungry, or providing free healthcare.
Straight up lie. Private charities have existed for a long time and more prevalent in free market countries. And if they weren't basically forced out of operation, though some still exist, mutual aid societies would likely be able to feed people who can't on their own. The premise that every interaction in capitalism is for profit is also a straight up lie, and I suspect you know this. Do you go into a relationship of any kind looking to gain something aside from some sort of companionship or something of that nature? I find this very unlikely.
Any resource, and I mean absolutely anything, can be owned and sold for profit. Even the most basic necessities like healthcare, food, and water can be gatekept by a large corporation and sold back to us for profit. This is the fundamental flaw with capitalism.
Things are not gatekept unless there's a monopoly, and the vast majority of which are state enforced, or the government tries to lower prices on a product, which causes prices to rise in other products, or the government tries to put artificial costs or restrictions on businesses, which causes prices, especially essential services, to rise. Patents are an excellent example of this. And also, the few so-called natural monopolies, which aren't really monopolies, people are generally okay with, such as Spotify with music streaming and Steam with gaming. And Netflix used to have a pretty large presence in the market as the blockbuster before it. The market will always find a way to take down a company if public cares and the government doesn't impede in its destruction.
People are not being paid enough.
The premise of people not being paid enough is vague on its face. Who decides what's paid enough? The government? Every socialist country shows that doesn't work, and many of the Nordic countries don't even have a minimum wage at all. No one person or group of people can decide that. Only the market can through supply and demand. I don't know about you, but I trust the markets and its interests more than those of government bureaucrats.